to the Keep 7 Gaming YouTube channel, and today we're going to be going over or recapping the Variety show that aired today on Twitch and on YouTube from Magic or from Wizards of the Coast, hosted by Jimmy Wong. I'm just going to be going over some of the cards I was able to capture from the stream, and we can just kind of go over those cards themselves. I wasn't able to get all of them, and I think the only one I missed is the Ugin Spirit Dragon card. It was in my video from yesterday. It was a little bit blurry, but that card has been confirmed, so that will be in the core set 2021. So that the Ugin Planeswalker card has been confirmed. But to get into the cards, the other cards that we saw in the stream, for those of you who missed it, the first one that we saw is Azusa, Lost But Seeking. It's a 3 mana, 2 and a green to cast human monk legendary creature with 1 power, 2 toughness, and you may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. This is apparently a reprint from the Kamigawa expansion, I believe. But yeah, I like this card. I think, if there's one thing that is going well, I think we have a lot of ramp cards out there. I don't know when Paradise Druid will rotate. She might be rotating out in September or October. And, the amount of times that you have a Paradise Druid or more than one Paradise Druid is few and far between usually. And usually casting a Paradise Druid after turns 1 through 3 is probably kind of feels bad. So having a legendary creature that ramps this hard or ramps for you this hard is pretty good. I think this might be a decent replacement for a Paradise Druid. She obviously can't tap for mana, but you can play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. So if you have a ramp engine or a way to get lands into your hand, i.e., if you have like a Risen Reef, this could be pretty incredible. If you have like a Temur Elementals deck with her included and you have Risen Reef, I mean, that's a pretty janky combo. Obviously, with Risen Reef, you put lands in tapped, but if you decline on the Risen Reef trigger and you have multiple of them, you can decline and put lands into your hand and then put them into the battlefield untapped with her. So I think her in conjunction with a Risen Reef would make for a very janky, fun combination. So very, very interesting card, and I think could definitely be very, very cool in like a Risen Reef Elementals, type combination deck. So I think her ability on its own is pretty powerful. If you're running a 26, 27, 28 land deck, I think this is kind of a very solid card for you to include. The next card is Fierce Empath, which I believe is another reprint. It's a 3 mana, 2 and a green to cast elf creature. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 6 or greater, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. And he has 1 power, 1 toughness. And then I'll kind of talk about this card in conjunction with our next card, Grim Tutor, as they both kind of have similar purposes. Grim Tutor is a 3 mana, 1 and 2 blacks to cast sorcery. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle your library, you lose 3 life. So both of these cards, I guess what that's called is a tutor effect. I mean, it's in the name for Grim Tutor, but it's a way to search your library for a specific card, get it into your hand. I think this is kind of tells us why Agent of Treachery was banned and not Winota and Luca, because if they're releasing a bunch of tutor effects, or at least if they're releasing these 2 tutor effects, from what I hear, Grim Tutor is a very popular card. A lot of people really like Grim Tutor. And Fierce Empath, I don't know, but if they're releasing things that have tutor effects, if they're if they're trying to release ways for you to find specific cards in your library that you want and get them into your hand, there's really no purpose to do that if an Agent of Treachery is prevalent in the meta. Obviously, if you're looking for something to play and it's a creature specifically with Fierce Empath, and if it's gonna be a creature, it could be anything else with Grim Tutor, I guess. But if they are creatures, there's no reason to play them if there's Agent of Treacheries abound out in the meta, because then you'll just look for something, you'll spend your time looking for something that you want to play, playing it, and then having it stolen. So I think that kind of spells it out as to why Agent of Treachery was taken, or banned, I should say, taken out of the meta, or banned. So yeah, but I think I'm not a huge fan of like going into your library and finding a card and putting it into your hand. I think that I think it's more fun in Magic when you're trying to top deck or dig for your answer. rather than just having a card that lets you go do that. But for those people who have, you know, specific decks that revolve around specific cards, you know, especially with Fierce Empath, if you have a specific creature that you really want to play, I guess that's okay. But, you know, a 3-mana 1/1, I don't think, with the ability to dig, I think there are better ways to really look for cards rather than play a 3-mana 1/1 to look for a specific card, you know, creature card with 6 mana or greater. And in most decks that are, you know, aggressive in play, you know, like well, I guess it was 6 mana or greater. But I was thinking of, you know, like your Quartzwood Crasher Gruul decks and stuff. You're not really digging. You really have the cards you want in your opening hand already. So I guess this is like an emergency breaker, but or an emergency card. You know, if in your opening hand and in your first 3 draws you didn't get what you need, you have him to you can go dig for it. But I just don't think that that's worth it. Grim Tutor, I think, is a bit more exciting because it's any card. So if there's any specific card, if you're digging for removal or anything like that and losing 3 life, I mean, if you dig for a Murderous Rider to get an answer for something that's you using 6 mana total and you're losing 5 life, so you better really have a target that you really want to kill and that's worth it. But you know, you could dig for other removal that isn't, you know, you could get like a Heartless Act or something. You know, if you have a creature out there that's 6 mana, you know, if somebody else just used their Fierce Empath to dig for something that's 6 mana or more and they just played it and you need to kill it and you dig for a Heartless Act and you kill it, you know, it's a cheap way to get rid of something. So I'm more excited about Grim Tutor than I am Fierce Empath. I think Grim Tutor would probably be the more competitive of the 2 cards. Next we have a Liliana Planeswalker, Liliana Waker of the Dead, 4 mana, 2 and 2 blacks to cast. She has a +1 ability. Each player discards a card. Each opponent who can't loses 3 life. Her -3 target creature gets -X and -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. And then at -7, you get an emblem with at the beginning of combat each turn. Put a target creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. That's pretty sick. She starts with 4 loyalty counters when you cast her. I would be interested to see if you could make a mono black discard deck with her, Ob Nixilis, Davriel, and like a bunch of burglar rats and like Yurok's Fenlurkers and stuff, and literally just win by making them discard so much. Because I think with Ob Nixilis and with Davriel, they have the similar effect where if an opponent can't discard a card, they lose a certain amount of life. So like if every turn you're just making them discard and the curve is actually really good. I mean, if you have Davriel who's 3, Ob Nixilis who's 3, Liliana who's 4, and you have a bunch of like 2-drops with like the rats and with the Yoruk's Fenlurker, you can just make them discard so much that their hand is never full, and they're losing life every turn. I think with like Ob Nixilis, it's like 1 or 2, I think, or maybe Davriel, it's like 1 or 2. They lose 1 or 2 life every turn. They don't have a card in hand, or when they can't discard and stuff. So discard could become pretty powerful. But I think her -7 is incredible. At the beginning of combat each turn, put a target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. So from a graveyard. So if you're playing a deck that, you know, if you're playing mono black discard, you don't have really any creatures aside from the burglar rats and the Yurok's Fenlurker, and you're playing like somebody who plays like somebody who plays a big creature, a Godzilla or Titanoth Rex, or like one of those cards. If you make them discard it, you can -7 her, assuming you get her to 7 loyalty. 7 loyalty is a lot. You have to +1 3 times, so she has to survive a significant amount of time. So you're going to have to be able to protect her somehow. But then you can just -7 and get like one of the things you made them discard back from their graveyard and give it haste. I think that's sick. So outside of mono black discard, I think this card could definitely see play. Where? Not entirely sure, but I think it's a pretty strong Planeswalker card. I will definitely be trying to jank up some mono black discard, and then even just some maybe mono black control or something like that. She could work her way into like a mono black control deck, and you can just get card advantage by making them discard and threaten the -7. So I like this card a lot. Next is Spark Hunter Manticore, 3 mana artifact creature. As an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card. It has protection from planeswalkers, which is pretty powerful. For 1 mana, Spark Manticore deals 1 damage to target planeswalker, and for 3 mana, Spark Manticore gains indestructible until end of turn, and it's a 3/4. Great way to get rid of planeswalkers. So if you want to have some planeswalker protection and some a way to kind of get rid of planeswalkers, this is a pretty good card to do that. You know, it can't get bounced by Teferi, and if Teferi just wants to be used as a way to dig for cards, he goes down to 1 loyalty by using his -3. You use 1 mana to kill him with this, and you don't even have to waste mana to swing. You know, so you can use 1 mana, kill a Teferi, and then swing for 3 if they don't have anything else on the board. So I don't hate this card. I think, you know, obviously it really only has viability. I think a pretty good sideboard card. If you come up against like a Super Friends deck, this card could crush. The next card is Rune Halo. It's a 2 mana, 2 white mana enchantment. As Rune Halo enters the battlefield, choose a card name. You have protection from chosen card name. So another solid sideboard card. I think this could be really good. I mean, against cat decks, you can shut down the cat, but there are better ways to shut down the cat, I think, potentially. But definitely a solid sideboard card. For specific, you know, if there's a specific card that an opponent's deck is based around, that's gonna cause you the most problems. This card can just shut that down. So I think this is a very solid sideboard enchantment. It's cheap and it will protect you from, you know, a deck that focuses around one specific card potentially. So I definitely think that this is a solid sideboard card for white, or any card or any deck that includes white. Our next, I think 1, 2, 3, 4 cards are all Teferi based. One of them being a Teferi Planeswalker card. So next is Teferi's Ageless Insight. It's a 4 mana, 2 and 2 blue legendary enchantment. If you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So if you would draw a card except the first one you draw in each of your draw steps, draw 2 cards instead. So I guess if you ever draw a card that isn't included, you know, that's not your draw step card, you draw 2 instead. So I guess if you have, I think the new Teferi Planeswalker, but there are other blue Planeswalkers that exist right now. I think there's like a Jace card where you can plus him to draw a card. So like if you're using like a Planeswalker ability, or if you have like a Winged Words or a card that draws cards, in where, you know, if you would draw a card, you draw 2 instead. That's actually really powerful. Like if you play like a Thirst for Meaning, draw 3, and every time you draw a card, you draw 2 instead. So that becomes a draw 2, 4, 6. And then would you only have to, that would be crazy if you played this and like what happens if you play like Finale of Revelation? Do you draw 20 if you draw 10? Is that how that would work? That's really interesting. I seriously wonder. That would be incredible. So this could be, I mean, this is the bluest card you've ever seen. Just draw power, draw power, draw power. Next is Teferi's Protege. It's a 3 mana, 2 and a blue to cast, human wizard. It's a 2/3 for 1 and a blue. It has an ability where you can tap it and draw a card and then discard a card. So very similar to, there was that blue wizard creature in Ikoria who has something similar. Essentially just cycling for you, but you know, this along with the Ageless Insight, you know, every time you draw a card, you draw 2 instead, and then you only have to discard 1, so that's pretty good. And then next we have Teferi's Tutelage, another 3 mana, 2 and a blue to cast, enchantment. When Teferi's Tutelage enters the battlefield, draw a card, then discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, target opponent mills 2 cards, so they put 2 in the top of their library, which in the current meta, you know, with things like Croxa, with things like Uro, milling isn't particularly great, but I think if you're playing blue mill, I mean, yeah, if you're playing like to mill out your opponent, this could be potentially pretty powerful. Especially with the other cards that we've just named, with Ageless Insight and with Teferi's Protege. I mean, blue is just leaning into draw power so hard. And then lastly is Teferi himself. 4 mana, 2 and 2 blues, legendary planeswalker. You may activate loyalty abilities of Teferi, Master of Time, on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant. So you can plus, minus, minus. You can do whatever you want with this card at any time. So kind of the reverse of Teferi Time Raveler, where Teferi shuts everything down to sorcery speed and allows you to play at instant speed again with his +1. This you can just off the rip. You know, at the very start of, you know, you play this card, you can +1, -3, -10 at any moment. His +1 is draw a card, then discard a card. So obviously very powerful with his his protege, tutelage, and ageless insight. -3, target creature you don't control phases out. And phasing is apparently something that existed in Magic a while ago, and for some people is pretty confusing, so I'm about to learn about it here. Treat it and anything attached to it as though it didn't exist until its controller's next turn. That doesn't sound so complicated. So if you have like an enchanted creature, if you -3 and phase out that creature, it doesn't exist. So let's say Teferi's on the field and they're about to declare attackers. You can -3 on an enchanted creature they control, and then it just doesn't exist. They can't attack with it. They can't do anything with it until their next turn. If that's what phasing is, that's not that hard to figure out. But so yeah, you can do that, which is pretty powerful, and you can do it on their turn. And then his -10, take 2 extra turns after this one, which would be an absolute game ender. So yeah, very powerful card. As broken as the current Teferi that we have. This is super powerful. I think this is a very powerful card. Gives you great draw power, potentially even more if you have more Teferi-based enchantments and stuff like that in the deck. You can totally disrupt somebody's turn by phasing their creature on their turn too. I don't think it's maybe as powerful as the current Teferi we have, because it doesn't shut down your opponent as hard. Because the current Teferi shuts down instant speed play, period. This just allows this specific card to play at instant speed, which maybe isn't as broken as I'm thinking. I didn't think this card was broken, but I think this is a powerful card. Definitely a way to keep tempo. You know, if you're minusing, you know, if you can -3 on one of their creatures, it is -3, and he only starts with 3 loyalty. So potentially, I think this is a pretty balanced card. I think this is a powerful, good card, but I don't think it's broken by any means. I think this is a very manageable card. All right, and then I think we're actually coming up on the last card here. Is Tormund's Crypt. This is another reprint. It is a 0 mana cost artifact. You can tap it and sacrifice Tormund's Crypt and exile all cards from a target player's graveyard. So I think this is a very powerful sideboard card. You know, if you know you're playing a player who is going to be fetching things from their graveyard, a 0 mana artifact that you can just immediately tap and then sacrifice, that's super powerful. You know, as soon as it can be a card that you have in your opening hand, and then as soon as you know, if you're playing a Reanimator deck, if you're playing like something with like Uro or something like that, and the second you know they're about to bring him back, or if you know they're going to bring him back on their next turn, put this down for 0 mana, tap it, sacrifice it, and then exile all cards. That could make them scoop on the spot. So I love this. I think this is great. I think this is going to be a fantastic graveyard hate sideboard card. And it could be great interruption. You know, if you're in a situation against like the cat decks and they have their guy in the graveyard, I guess they could just bring him back if they have a food before this triggers. So maybe not the best against the cat decks. But if they have Kroxa in them, it's a great way to just get rid of Kroxa and then all the ways that Kroxa can come back. So even if they draw into another one, and it's 0 mana. Like if you have 4 of these in your sideboard, you're not losing anything by playing them, you know? 0 mana, that's incredible. That's incredible value to shut down a lot of different kinds of decks. So I love this card. I think this is going to be great. And that about does it. I have some notes here just to recap, in case you missed it again. So Hound, and this might be a big deal. I mean, I was looking in the chat and it was a big deal to a lot of people, but the creature type Hound is now going to be dog. So I guess for you dog lovers, that's a huge deal. But for me, I don't really particularly care. But hey, do you? You like what you like. I think Hound is cooler than Dog. Dog sounds like a bit domesticated. Hound sounds a bit more feral and cool, but hey, what are you going to do? And then there are three. I mean, we already went over Liliana is returning as a planeswalker, but there were two other confirmed planeswalkers who will be returning. Garruk, which I'm very excited about. He's my favorite. He is returning without his curse, so it's the first time we will be seeing him without the curse since I forget when they mentioned. Again, I'm pretty new to Magic, so I don't know the lore or the timeline that well, but I think it was like before War of the Spark, maybe. I know he got cursed by Liliana, and then I know he got cursed again by Oko. And he's been, I think he just got rid of the curse, and we haven't seen him since, so he's going to be returning without the curse. So it'll be my first time seeing uncursed Garruk. And then Chandra will be returning, and if you recall, and actually I'll pull it up here. So Chandra will be returning. And if you recall from yesterday's video, we also confirmed these two cards. The card on the top, the Ugin the Spirit Dragon, is confirmed returning, and it was this specific card. So if this specific card is actually real, I think it can be believed that this will be the Chandra, at least one of the maybe Chandras that will be present in the M21 set. So I think it's all but confirmed that this card is real as well, the Chandra Heart of Fire. But it was confirmed on stream that she is returning, so I have a suspicion that this card is real and will be one of the cards in the M21 set. So yeah, Garruk, Chandra, Liliana coming back. Garruk uncursed. Very excited about that. And yeah, that about does it for the recap on the variety show. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think of the cards that they the reprints, and I think most of these were reprints. I think some of these, I think all the Teferi ones were new. So let me know what you think of the reprints. Let me know what you think of the Teferi cards, and thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.